Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Johns. Alongside me, Brady King. What's going on, Brady?
Not much, just another day, another dollar, I guess. No Matt Ricketts today. He is not feeling well, so we'll get him back possibly tomorrow on the show. Um, Definitely another good Saturday. From start to finish, I got to watch pretty much the entire Penn State Michigan game. One of the most boring games I've ever watched, honestly. I think Drew Aller sucks. So, yeah, good.
Yeah, you're
But
not
then
good.
after that, obviously Ohio State played amazing. Couldn't name the score.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
Yep. Quote unquote. Matt gets better. We'll see you on the next episode. But, for everybody watching, like and subscribe to the video and won't waste too much time. Talk about the Michigan Penn State game. It was the most boring game, Brady says in quotes. A combined 39 points. One bet that Matt actually did hit on this week was the Penn State Michigan under. JJ McCarthy, 7 for 8, 60 yards. Yep. Drew Aller, 10 for 22, 70 yards and a touchdown.
Two great players.
Two awesome quarterbacks. Wow. But, the star of the show, Blake Corum, 26 carries, 145 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. What did you take away from this game in general?
Yeah. I think Penn State's defense was more aggressive than Michigan's defense. I think they're a better defense than Michigan's defense. But I also took away that Michigan's offense is better than Penn State's offense by a wider margin. Penn State's offense is absolutely awful. They're good against bad teams, their offenses, because they just have better players. But when they match up against Ohio State, Penn State didn't get inside Ohio State's red zone until the final drive when we were playing soft coverage. So that's pathetic. Michigan, they actually moved the ball at times in the first half, but Drew Aller played scared. He fumbled. They went for it they went for a 2-point conversion early. That wasn't going to work. They can't gain 3 yards. What is James Franklin thinking? Since when can Drew Aller complete a pass when he has to complete a pass? So I also took away that neither team has a passing game that's extremely effective. I know JJ's had a couple of games against terrible teams where he's thrown the ball decently in numbers wise and had a high completion percentage. We just saw him against his first defensive test, and they didn't trust him to throw it. The only times he would throw the ball, he would throw a check down. They weren't throwing down the field on Penn State. So that just kind of showed. The last thing I took away from this game, Michigan's run game can still be good when they want to do it. And the running back they choose to do that with is Blake Corum the most. Matt, we're running out of time. I'm not sure if you're going to change your mind and act like you were right on this one, but if you're watching this,
which is probably not.
You're probably not. Terrible take that Donovan Edwards was better. So that's all I have to say.
All right. Yeah, just for people for reference, Matt was saying that Donovan Edwards was a better running back than Blake Corum, and he's gonna have a better 2023. And you don't even have to look at the stats or anything. Just go look at a couple of highlights, and you can just be like, this year it's been Blake Corum and definitely not Donovan Edwards, who actually found the end zone this week, which was crazy enough.
But, he did. That was when I saw him run. I'm like, oh my god, that was definitely his longest run of the year. He had like a 20-yard touchdown run. It was a weird play. JJ bobbled the snap, picked it up, handed it, and there was nobody in the hole, and Donovan ran into the end zone. I'm like, wow, that's exactly how Donovan Edwards scored last year on his long runs, untouched when there's nobody there to stop him.
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? But, obviously the game coming up here, and wow, we're 12 days away.
We're wild.
12 days away, and we're going to have, a big show next week regarding the game before Brady and Matt and Brady's brother Caleb go up to Michigan to watch that one. Looking down at the other games, Alabama took down Kentucky 49-21. Jalen Milroe, 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. Still, he's what, remember we were talking about Lamar Jackson is basically just a running back playing quarterback. Jalen Milroe literally is a running back playing quarterback. He's literally the Lamar stuff, rookie year Lamar. That's literally what he is right now.
Yeah, he's a very good runner. I really think he's definitely Alabama's best running back and their best quarterback. He's a lot better than people were acting like towards the beginning of the season. People wanted him bench for, let me say this real quick. Tyler Buckner.
Yep.
And Tyler Buckner almost lost them a game against South Florida. So take that as you will. I think Jalen Milroe is the right option for them. He's got them in a position to where I would favor them to win the SEC right now. I would say if I had to bet money on it, I would pick the Tide. They're looking good. Their defense plays fast. Jalen Milroe has found his groove running the ball and knowing when to run the ball and all that stuff. He's got a good arm. Maybe not the best decision maker at times, but it hasn't been bad since the Texas game to where they would lose a game. But he's got enough of an arm to where he can push it downfield. Just crazy athletic, fast, strong. Alabama's a good team.
Yep. They, I believe this week they play they play a scrub team. Actually, I think it's Chattanooga. They play this week. Yep, Chattanooga.
Wow.
12:00 noon game. I mean, hey, they played Texas. I'll give them credit. They did play Texas earlier in the year, but they had to swap some stuff around. But still, it's one of those cupcake teams right before the Iron Bowl against Auburn, which again, one of those games where you throw the records out of the window. It's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. You've seen Auburn with some of their not so great teams take on a good Alabama team, and it's been pretty close. But nonetheless, Alabama, Georgia set to face each other in the SEC championship game on December the 2nd. So that should be, that's obviously a very, very big game if Bama wins out. Same with Georgia, who ended up destroying Ole Miss in this game, 52-17. It was back and forth the first couple of drives. It was 14-14, and then Georgia just went on a 38-3 run to end the game. So Georgia having no Brock Bowers didn't seem to be a problem in this one.
No, it didn't. I didn't really watch much of this game. I thought he played. I'm not positive, but I was told he was going to play. He might not have. But anyways, I'm not surprised Georgia won.
Actually, he did play. I didn't even realize that either. Wow.
He did play. Okay.
He had a touchdown. Yeah. Shoot.
Okay.
Well, that also shows the fact that I didn't watch much of this game either. But I mean, him being back, he wasn't obviously like a crazy role, but him just being back on the field is still a threat. But continue.
Yeah. So after watching some of the highlights of the game and all that, I feel like Georgia is obviously clearly the better team. Ole Miss is like a worse version of Penn State. They win most of their against the bad teams and the average teams, but they don't beat the great teams.
Yep.
And Lane Kiffin. So I just don't know what to think of them. I'm not surprised at least Georgia won. I'm not surprised they won big. Not saying I thought they'd win 52-17, but I'm not surprised. I did think that was one of Matt's worst picks to date to pick Ole Miss to cover. I know what he was looking at, a top 10 team with a double-digit underdogs, but come on, it's Ole Miss. But overall, Georgia showed that they got up for a big team, and they're obviously still a good team, even though they didn't look so good at the beginning of the year. Although not as good as the past couple years, especially last year where they were dominant on offense and defense. I think they could definitely have a good shot at winning the SEC championship against Bama. But like I said, as of now, I would favor Alabama to beat them. But I wouldn't be shocked to see Georgia pass Ohio State in the rankings on Tuesday just because they have the same amount of ranked wins now, and Georgia was able to get a bigger win, by more points. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter at this point, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. Again, just trying to be in the top 4 is really the main thing at this point. Just try and win all your games, get in the top 4, just get a ticket to the dance. Georgia's got Tennessee this week, 3:30 on CBS on the road. Then they go on the road to play Georgia Tech. That was actually Georgia's final home game of the season. Well, technical home game. They're playing against Alabama, literally in Atlanta, Georgia. The Ohio State game, you were at that game. Matt was at that game. 38-3, Ohio State ended up winning. We already knew this was going to be a rout. And it was a rout early and often and finished a rout. Recap your thoughts in a small time frame about things that stood out to you, because there were a lot of things that stood out to you, but just pick a couple things.
Yeah, so the first thing and obvious thing is Kyle McCord having his best game of his career so far. And it wasn't just because we played Michigan State. He was just dialed in. He was throwing the ball where it needed to be, not just completing it. There's a lot of completions he's had that are bad. I would argue that are bad completions where he should have had them in a different spot. Maybe the play is a bigger play or it's an easier catch. But he was on the money, on time, throwing a good ball, and had a good stat line. No mistakes either. No big mistakes. Got Marvin involved. Marvin with 3 touchdowns on the game. A great back shoulder throw to the best tight end in America, Cade Stover. Running a seam route, perfect throw for a touchdown, and just the simple middle of the field, 10+ yard throws he was making were on the money. So that stood out. Defense was missing guys: Tommy Eichenberg, Josh Proctor, Lathan Ransom, who we found out after the game is going to be out for the season, which is a massive hit. That sucks. I won't even lie. That's going to really suck for moving forward, but we'll have to replace it. And I also thought Trey once again showed major explosion, but we saved him up. And then Marvin, if Marvin goes off against Michigan and we win, there's your Heisman Trophy winner.
All right, Ohio State's got Minnesota this Saturday, 4:00 p.m. on Big Ten Network, and then the following Saturday, everyone knows what game. It's the game.
Yes.
Looking at another team that's up in the rankings, number 4, Florida State took down Miami in their annual rivalry game. They won 27-20, tight game. Rivalry games, it's normally going to be tight in that regard. Jordan Travis, 19 for 31, 265 yards, and a touchdown pass. And then looking at the running back, Trey Benson had a day, 16 for 80 and 2 touchdowns, was a big reason why they ended up winning this game with his 2 touchdown runs. He had a touchdown run of 38 yards and a 5-yard touchdown run to start the game off. Florida State, again, I think we're talking about undefeated teams. We're looking at them as probably the lesser team. Are they better than Michigan, in your opinion, or no?
No.
Okay. No, just wanted to throw it out there. Just wanted to ask the question, but
No, I don't think it's close either. I would take Michigan by probably double digits.
Okay. And that's another thing. I kind of look at some of these teams real quick. Actually, Washington took down Utah 35-28. In a game where it looked like Utah, I think you guys picked Utah to win the game. You and Matt did, which was a valid pick because Utah has gone on the road and ended team seasons. Washington was able to hold on and survive. They won the game by 7. They're trying to keep their November to remember going forward. They take on Oregon State Saturday night on the road at 7:30. They are 1-point underdogs. So that will be a very interesting game to keep our eyes on. And we'll talk about that in our preview show coming up. With that. And another one, I know it doesn't really affect the playoff rankings or standings or anything, but Missouri beating down Tennessee that bad, 36-7. Is Missouri the best 2-loss team in the country?
I would say no, because Tennessee's shown this against Florida too, and Florida's awful. I think Tennessee's just not very good. Missouri though is a solid team. They've been solid this year. They had a win over. Or not had a win, but they almost beat LSU, and they were in it with Georgia. But I think I like Missouri, but I wouldn't say they're the best 2-loss team. I would take Penn State, Ole Miss for sure over them. I would say.
Okay, all right. Quick look at it's the AP rankings, but no one cares about that. We're going to take a look at the undefeated and 1-loss teams that are still technically in it. So Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, they're all in it still. They're all undefeated. Florida State and Washington, those are the 5 undefeated teams at the moment. Oregon, 9-1. Texas, 9-1. Alabama, 9-1. And the Louisville Cardinals at 9-1.
Yep.
Now, that's another team. They played Thursday night. They took down Virginia 31-24. Very close game against a 2-8 Cavaliers team. Louisville takes on Miami on Saturday at Miami, and then they go home to take on Kentucky the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Say Louisville wins these 2 games. That means they would take on Florida State in the ACC championship game. So let's go real hypothetical. All right.
Yeah.
Let's think about this real quick. So Georgia wins out. Okay.
Yeah.
Bama wins out.
Yep.
Again, once we get to that point, we can make our picks and everything. All right.
Yeah.
We'll do our game picks. But you're rolling with Bama in that. If stuff continues to go you said you would put money on Bama, right?
Yeah, I would pick Bama right now.
Okay.
Just due to the fact that I honestly trust Nick Saban so much this year for stuff that if he doesn't get in the playoff the year before, he always does the next year.
Okay. So if that were to happen, Bama would be 12-1, Georgia would be 12-1.
Mm-hmm.
If you got Ohio State, Michigan,
yeah,
and if we're picking Ohio State in this game, and Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship game,
yeah,
Ohio State would be 13-0, and Michigan would be 11-1. Now, Washington and Oregon. Washington's game against Oregon State, we don't know what's going to happen. We have no clue. The Pac-12 is up for grabs because you've got them, Oregon State, and Oregon, because Oregon also plays Oregon State the week after on a Friday.
Right.
And it's up for grabs at this moment. Mm-hmm. So it's a three-team race at the moment. Oregon State's not going to make the playoff, but they could grab two really good wins and then turn around and play another team and maybe beat them. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of weird scenarios that could happen in this, but then you also throw in the wrench of Louisville, because if Louisville wins out and goes 11-1 and they take on a Florida State team who wins out and is 12-0.
Yeah.
What happens if Louisville finishes 12-1 and wins the ACC?
I think they would get in over any one-loss non-champ, because the committee has shown that they'll never put a one-loss non-champ in over a one-loss champ. They value the conference championship quite a bit, unless the conference champion has two losses. There's never been a two-loss team in the playoff. So I think Louisville would likely get in, depending on what happens with the other games. But I think Louisville would get in if, let's say it comes down to, let's say Ohio State's undefeated, and Texas wins the Big 12, 12-1.
Yeah.
And Alabama wins the SEC,
12-1.
And then whoever wins the Pac-12 is one loss. Then I don't know what happens with Louisville.
And then another team to think about is Georgia, who finished 12-0, but then they lose to Bama.
Yeah, that would be definitely would have to think about that.
People are, it's an open door, but there's a potential where 9 teams could be playing for their lives to get into the playoff. This is a deep year.
There's a lot of good teams, and there's not one team that's just like completely dominant over everybody else, or there's not a small group of teams that just reign over college football this year. There's a lot. So it's crazy to see. There's so many scenarios to the point where Ohio State has to win out.
Yeah,
to be safe, we have to win out. We have to beat Michigan.
Because we saw last year when Georgia played in the SEC championship game, we knew that they were going to go. We knew they were going to win. They knew they were going to go. Michigan, when they played in the Big Ten championship, those two teams were locks to go. Yeah, they were, because everybody else beat each other, and and TCU, they lost in the Big 12 championship game, but they were undefeated when they lost. So it was like, okay. And then you had Ohio State, who was one loss, but was not a conference champion winner nor loser. Right. But USC, who was a one loss, and then they lost in the championship game to the same team that beat them earlier in the season. Yeah. And then it was kind of process of elimination. But this year is definitely not that way. You could literally have undefeated versus one loss in the SEC. You'll have at least one, most likely one undefeated Big Ten team that makes the playoff and everything.
Right.
Then you have a potential undefeated versus one loss in the ACC, a potential undefeated versus one loss in the Pac-12, and then a potential one-loss champion in the Big 12.
Right.
So you have 5 conferences through 9 teams. I mean, somebody, if there are 5, there could be 5 teams. Well, one team finishes 13. No, there could be 4 teams that finish 12-1, and one of those guys is going to get left out.
Absolutely, there's definitely a scenario here, and it's really unprecedented. Like, I've never seen this many teams with a chance to this point where it's such a clear path for this many teams to win their games and make a spot for them. So at the end, we could see a lot of one-loss teams. Like, there's a good chance we could see a lot of one-loss teams when it's all said and done, when they make their selections on the Sunday of Selection Sunday.
It'll be a year unlike any other, because this is the last year of the 4 teams. When you go to next year, it's 12 teams moving forward. And I mean, you would have no doubt in your mind, if those teams were to win their games, the rest of their regular season games, and have competitive conference championship games, they would all make the 12-team playoff. You have 9 teams, and then you'd have to worry about 2-loss teams like Oregon State, Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss. You'd have probably a group of 5 team like Tulane that joins the field. You know, like, there's a lot more stuff to worry about next year. But with it being 9 teams trying to fight for 4 spots in the last 20 days of the season, it's pretty wild to just wrap your mind around and be like, this is going to be really fun to see which teams emerge out of the pack. And then there's still going to be semifinals and championship game still going to be played. But but we got any final thoughts before we get on out of here? Because we're doing a preview show tomorrow. We'll preview some of the big games coming up and everything. But you got any final thoughts?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I think I've got everything I've needed to give you a say.
All right. If you guys watched all the way through, like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, and we appreciate everything. Appreciate all the views and everything else. But we will see you guys next time.